Good morning and welcome to your favorite Friday morning podcast, Conversation with Buddy, brought to you by The Rec, way more than a bowling alley. Oh, by the way, if you've never been to The Rec, you should come down, bring your family, bring your work crew, and it's a great place to have fun. It's affordable and it's safe. So come on down. Now, the reason why we do these podcasts each week is that we want to hear the stories of our guests, how they encourage and inspire people, and really the challenges that they've overcome. Hopefully it'll impact you. And anyway, keep showing up each week. We love to have you here. And this week, I want to introduce my guest. His name is Steve Schlag. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, you know what you're in for, so.
Hey, we're ready for anything, man.
You know, I've only known you for 17 plus years.
I know,
so
right?
That's kind of scary.
It is a little scary.
You know?
Now, before I introduce you, when I drove up, I saw this car out there, and I saw a duck thing on your license plate. I'm like, I wonder if that's Steve's.
It are.
Come to find out you're a duck fan. So,
you know.
Well, how'd you become a duck fan?
Just through kind of osmosis.
Did you go to Oregon?
No, went to OCE.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so
we'll talk about that.
We have a lot of ducks in our family, and all those ducks were wolves. And so I affectionately call us wolves in ducks' clothing.
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, we've all gravitated.
I've heard the wolves in sheep's clothing, but not the wolves in
ducks' clothing.
ducks' clothing.
Yeah. Did you say birds of a feather?
Flock together.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, this is funny. Well, hey, we're going to have fun. But let me introduce you real quick so the audience can get to know who you are. You say that you're born and raised in Salem, actually in a small community of Clear Lake, now part of the city of Kaiser.
Yep.
Okay. Grandparents homesteaded in Clear Lake in 1922. Those were tough times.
Yeah, they were farmers.
Wow. You went to McNary High School, Kaiser, Oregon. What year did you graduate?
1970.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, that's the best I can do. Yeah. Class of 1970.
Okay, nice. You went to the Oregon College of Education in Monmouth, Oregon. We know it today as Western Oregon University.
Yes. I,
too, went to WASC, Western Oregon State College. Yeah. So when you say OCE, we know you're old. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. At least I wasn't there when it was Oregon Normal School. Because if I had been, then it would never have been normal.
It would never be normal. That's funny. You married your high school sweetheart. You began dating the summer, going into your senior year of high school, and you've been, 52 years of marriage on 11/11/24.
Yep.
You call that's Veterans Day.
It's Veterans Day.
And what did you say your wife calls it?
My wife calls it Armistice Day. She goes, the day we went to war. And I've never been able to cure her of that.
Okay.
And I'm not even going to try.
Was there a reason why you got married on Veterans Day?
Yeah, she forced me to.
She did.
Yeah. It was a military wedding. Yeah. Well, there were guns there. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Okay.
I got it. That's funny. All right. So you have 2 children, a daughter and a son, 4 grandchildren. Our only grandson is an Army veteran. You have 3 granddaughters, 2 in college, and 1 is a senior in high school. You've been in banking and finance for over 30 years, and then current until 5/31/24 with the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs for over 17 years as a residential home loan program manager and senior underwriter. And that's how you and I met, was through doing VA loans.
Yep.
And you love veterans, and you're a veteran.
No, I am not.
You're not a veteran.
No,
It just makes sense that you got married on 11/11.
I know.
You work for ODVA.
It's really kind of a strange story because actually what happened was that the day I was supposed to take my physical, what was I, a freshman or sophomore in college. I was to take my physical, so I went down, took the physical, and shortly thereafter, they said, "Hey, you flunked the physical." So, bye-bye.
Okay.
So long. And that afternoon, I went out and threw a 2-hitter against Chico State.
No kidding.
Go figure.
That is weird.
Yeah, but it was me, so it was kind of stayed true to, to form. So, but yeah, no, it was really kind of funny because I have an uncle who passed away here a few years back who was at Pearl Harbor. He was in the United States Navy.
Yeah.
And another uncle that was Air Force veteran in the Korean War. So, and then a great-grandfather who was with Teddy Roosevelt in the Spanish-American War in Cuba. So he was an officer, as I recall. Yeah.
So you have roots in the military. That's just
roots
the bottom
there.
line.
Yeah. But I got degrafted off the tree. So
I mean, back in 1972.
Yep. About 72.
About 72, you were being drafted because the draft was still going on.
Yeah. The lottery. Yeah. At that time, and they were taking numbers from 1 to 120, as I recall. And my number came up 76 or 96. So I thought, hey, I'm going.
Now, is that per county or how does that work? What do you mean? 120?
I don't remember how that went. Could have been statewide. I'm not really 100% sure.
Okay.
But so yeah. But hey, I thought for sure I was going, and fortunately for me, the military would never been the same. I didn't go.
Yeah.
But did have a cousin who whose lottery number was 365, and he didn't know that until the day after that he went out. He was coward. He didn't want to see his number in the paper, so he enlisted in the National Guard and went out that night and got hammered. And next morning he got up and grabbed the paper, and there was his date of birth, number 365. He had never been touched, and he cried for weeks.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Hey, the last thing about you before we start our podcast here is the thing you say, best of all, a born-again Christian, Jesus Christ is Lord, my rock and my salvation. The next best thing, except for my lovely bride, I had the honor and privilege to baptize all 3 of my granddaughters.
Yeah.
Man, wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I get emotional thinking about it. And thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah. I'm going to make you cry on the podcast.
Yeah, just a minute.
Hold on here.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. And I got to baptize them in the church that my wife and I and kids were baptized in. It was West Salem Christian Church on Glen Creek.
Yeah.
And so it was great.
Full circle.
Yeah.
How old were your granddaughters at their ages when they got baptized?
Youngest then would have been like 14, 15.
Yeah.
So I think the oldest, who is now 21, would have been like 17 or 18. Yeah.
So it sounds like you have a really close relationship with your grandkids.
Yeah. Very,
your
very,
grandson and your 3 granddaughters. Yeah.
Yep. Should have had grandchildren first.
I know.
Yeah,
I've heard that many times.
It would have made child rearing so much easier.
Yeah. I've heard that. I've heard pastors say, man, if I knew how fun grandkids were having, I'd bypass the kids and go right directly to the grandkids.
I'd adopted several.
Yeah, done.
But yeah, it was great. It was an absolute joy.
Yeah.
The baptistry was probably 3/4 filled,
Yeah.
And then while I was crying, it filled up.
Even more.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Wow. What a day. Hey, let's dive in real quick. I want to get to know Steve a little bit. I know you, we see each other almost on a weekly basis. You're leaving a Bible study and I'm showing up at 1, which is kind of funny. I've known you as a ODVA underwriter, and you approve every loan we ever do. So that's pretty cool. Thank you.
Well, when you pay me under the table like you do, I mean, what more can I do?
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Scratch that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. But you're retiring here soon. But let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
You grew up in Kaiser or Clear Lake. Yep. Take us back. One of my favorite things to ask is, how'd you grow up and how did your parents impact you to make you who you are today? That's really what I want the message always to be about is, we're, as parents, we have a big responsibility. I want to know how your parents impacted you, then how you also pass that on to your kids.
I think I look back, I just have one sibling, my brother, and he's 3 years younger.
So you're the firstborn.
And I was the oldest. And so you get experimented on first.
Yeah.
Young parents. My mom was 19 and my dad was 21. So very young parents. And I look back, and I think one of the best things that happened to my brother and I was the fact that we grew up in a farm atmosphere. I think every kid should grow up on a farm. I really do.
Yes.
although sometimes my wife will say, my work ethic is a little suspect from time to time, but that's one of the things that we were able to really kind of hone in on was work ethic. And my parents worked. My dad worked 3 different jobs. They had a full-time job during the day. Then he had about 30 some odd acres of fruit crops, and so he would do that as well. And then he also was self-employed on the side. So he was out of the house quite often. Mom was pretty much a stay-at-home mom, and so when she did go to work, she would go to work maybe 3 to 6 months out of the year. Our grandparents had a huge influence on my brother and I, and grandmother was a very devout Christian.
Yeah.
In fact, I had never in my entire life ever heard my grandmother swear, ever. There was never a drop of alcohol in that house, and I will share some. It was funny because if she got on your bad side, or if you got on her bad side, I should say, or if she was really upset with you. As soon as she would say, "You little aspect," or "I don't chew my cud twice," you knew that this 4 foot, 10.5 inch tall woman, you were in trouble. But she had a tremendous influence on my brother and I, and learned a great deal from our grandparents. And I think that's why my wife and I are both very, very, very attached and involved with our grandchildren. That was kind of learned from my experience in that respect. But my parents did work a lot, my dad particularly. So he was almost for a long time an absentee kind of father.
Okay.
But he was, folks, back in that time frame, I look back and it's, man, growing up where I did in that rural environment, we were all very close. All the kids were close. We did stuff together all the time. We didn't have computers, didn't have the cell phones, all the other, electronic stuff. So you had to make and create your own fun.
Yeah. And
we were never without having fun. But and church was a pretty good release for that as well.
Yeah.
I grew up in what was called an EUB church, Evangelical United Brethren, and that building is no longer there. Went to a grade school in Clear Lake, and if you go out North River Road, you take a right on Clear Lake Road. There's a school that sits there. It's kind of white. There's an old building in the middle. My brother and I went to grade school there, where my dad and my aunt went to grade school. So that community, it was very close, very tight knit, and so that was another area that I think that we really, really, really got a chance to grow as kids. And church was a big part of it back then. Sunday school, Bible, vacation Bible school, always a great part of that. So that tight-knit community also helped in that formation, I think, of attitudes and beatitudes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
when do you think you accepted Christ? A lot of people, I was born in the church, but to me, you have to make a personal choice. What does that look like for you? Did your grandma have the influence? Did your mom or your dad?
I think you look back, and I think it was early the time when I was in high school, and I was really heavily involved in Young Life, and Young Life was a pretty integral part of my high school days, and so being really involved in that was another area that became highly and very, very important to me. Of course, as a child, I was baptized, but then actually it wasn't until I was in probably my late 20s, early 30s. We had a family baptism at West Salem Christian Church, and I was baptized again. And so I just think that the influences of the community, because we were, like I said, we were very close, had a lot of very, very devout Christian families in that small community. And if you sneezed on the bus coming home, as soon as you got off, walked in the house, your mom, my mom would say, "I understand you have a cold." And the bus stop was, I walked 2 minutes from where it dropped me off to my house. And so everybody knew what you were doing and why you were doing it and how you were doing it. So, but the community had a big impact as well. So.
Yeah. Now, did your parents, are they still alive? Do they remain married?
My dad passed away at the age of 81 about 11 years ago, 12 years ago. My mom is still alive. She lives in Dallas. She's 91.
No kidding.
And so it's, you look at it as it, and I think I've shared with you too that I grew up in this place. Those years was Town and Country Lanes. Yeah. And I grew up in here. Ann Liebold is my cousin.
That's right.
And
Don and Ann Liebold.
And I've when I was in junior high school, I worked for them down here. Did different stuff and never got paid cash. Always got paid in bowling lines. I look back now. It's kind of like, gee, Don, maybe you owe me back wages.
We're gonna have to hit Don up on that, I think.
Well, we'll have to do it very covertly because one of the things he loves to remind people about. When I was in maybe 12, 13, 14 years old. Yeah. In that era, that age group there. I would arm wrestle him for milkshakes. And you always double or nothing. Well, I lost. Then I disappeared for a few years, just got heavily involved in working and then sports, and came back here, one time, must have been me, I was 16 or 17, and walk in and, of course I'd seen him here periodically, but walked in and say, okay, Don, let's double or nothing. He looked at me and he said, no.
He's smart.
No. Yeah. So, but I still owe him, I don't know how many thousands of milkshakes.
So maybe he doesn't owe you those wages after all.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably a good idea. No.
You guys are even, man. What's funny that all these years later, you and Don still part of the same Bible study.
Yeah.
How many years?
His total man is the name tag that they gave this group, and we used to meet down here in the restaurant down before it was remodeled. Now we meet up in the Liebold room, and
the Liebold room. I love
that group was formed 41 years ago, of which Don was one of the original members. Dick Withnell was in that group as well. My Fellowship Christian Athlete, my FCA Bible that I have here, that was given to me by Joe Broker, who was one of the founders of that group. Okay. And I've been with that group for 25 years, plus or minus a frog hair. Yeah.
You guys meet, not that you go every Wednesday, but Wednesday mornings at 6:30?
Every Wednesday morning. We do it all year long. We never take a break. And unless somebody goes on vacation, obviously. But Wednesday morning, 6:15. And sad part is that we're usually never done by 8:30 when another group comes in to kick us out.
You guys are still up there yakking away, man.
I just, I find it, it's gosh, I wish you guys wouldn't do that. No, but it's great because I'm the only one still working in that group. Yeah. Even at my ripe old age of 42. Yeah. But
that's coming to an end.
Yep. It are.
Okay. So your grandma, was that your dad's mom or
yes,
your? Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting, real quick side note, my dad, his mom was 4'10". She had 14 kids, and I don't think I ever heard, never a cuss word, never drink. She just didn't. She read her Bible 3 times a day. She was faithful. Yep. So it sounds like they could have been really good friends.
You look at that era, you look at it, and it was in small communities like that. The church was a huge influence on everybody because of those small groups. Those the small center of population. Everybody knew one another, and it was always, and everybody helped one another. I always found it funny that my grandfather was pretty laid back, quiet kind of guy, and really didn't ever speak a whole lot unless he really had something to say to you. I just remember one time, we did do this every once in a while. If I were around, he'd come over to our house. We just lived across the cherry orchard from one another, so he would walk over. And he'd come in and he'd say, look at my dad, and he goes, Howard, I got a little tickle in my throat. I wonder if I could get, and my dad would go over to the cabinet, open it up, and he'd have a whiskey bottle there.
Yeah.
And for medicinal purposes only.
For sure.
So he would pour my grandfather a little whiskey, and he'd drink it down, and, oh, yeah, it's better. Okay. All right, thank you. I'll see you later. I'm getting a lot better now.
I'm getting a lot better now.
Yeah, so it was always, and whether my grandmother knew or not, I don't know. I suspect she probably did, but I also suspect she didn't care, because he was not... he didn't imbibe that much, but it was always cute to have him come over and do that. And you just kind of look at him going,
Too funny.
Yeah.
Sounds like you had a great upbringing. I agree with you, though. Living on the farm, I grew up on a farm, changing pipe, bucking bells, feeding the pigs and the cows, mowing the yards. I'm not talking a little yard. I'm talking a big yard.
Oh yeah,
hand pushing.
I had a riding lawnmower because we had 1 acre of yard to mow.
Yeah.
So I would use that, and when we would water our lawn, I set irrigation pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how big it was. And,
in your yard, that's funny.
But
good times.
It was.
Times.
Great.
I think the kids these days probably don't know how to work that way. Like that would be foreign to them.
I agree.
I always say, I don't know, I think you would say the same thing, but the two greatest gifts my parents gave me is they loved me and they taught me to work. That's it. If I learned nothing else, that was all I needed. Would you say that's fair?
I think it's a fair analogy. I really do. And I think that that's one of the things we passed on to our kids. Our daughter's the oldest, and then our son. I just think that because in between the banking years, in fact, I was in banking for quite a while, and while I was in banking, I had a couple of businesses I owned. Yeah. I had a kind of a moratorium there for a while, so to speak. I was in the car business for about 3-4 years.
Is that how you knew Dick?
And I knew Dick. He was leaving U.S. National Bank of Oregon as I was coming in 1974. Wow. So, that's where I got to meet him, so during that time frame, because I had a small partner with a small Chevrolet dealership, and then I was in the RV business, and here in town, and so, but it was, the number of guys that I worked with at U.S. Bank back then got into that industry. Yeah. And sometimes I wonder, did I go that route just because so many of the guys that I admired and looked up to, because I was the youngest of the group, maybe I did, maybe I shouldn't have. And sometimes you don't listen. And that's one of the things that I continue to work on and struggle with is listening to the Holy Spirit. I'm a slow learner.
He's still speaking to you, Steve?
He's speaking to me right now. He's going, you're going to have to say something in a minute that you probably should say. But, it was fun. It was fun. The guys that I worked with back in that era were a fun, loving bunch of guys, a group. Only one that I can put my finger on that I'm really aware of that is another brother in Christ is Dick. I would certainly like to think and hope that one of these days those guys would come to a savings knowledge and grace and the grace of Jesus Christ. I really do.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so when you grew up, you went to high school, you met your wife in high school. She was your high school sweetheart. Yep. Well, she's the same grade as you.
Yep. We were both,
When did you start dating? How'd that all begin?
We started a date summer going into our senior year of high school.
Now, pause for a sec. So I have 2 daughters. One daughter, always, she's looking for a guy to marry one day. So what's interesting, I'm curious, how did you pursue your girlfriend back then? How's it different than today? Because I think guys are more passive today. I want these young guys to understand you got to pursue the girl. You got to be proactive. You are the man, be the man. And I'd say that's really not what I'm seeing. Or my wife and I talk a lot about this. Anyway, I want to hear, how did you pursue your girlfriend to become your wife?
It started out because I had a class or two with her when we were sophomores. So I got to know her then and then when she was a junior, she was dating a senior who I got to be friends with. And then they broke up. It was in that early summer that I was working for Dole Cannery. And just so happens that in high school, we had our every Friday night after a game or something or whatever we would do, sometimes even after a dance, we'd go to Shakey's Pizza Parlor, which was here in Kaiser. Now there's a cannabis joint there now. And
a cannabis joint, that's kind of yeah. Oh, there you go.
I know, it's bad fun.
No.
Bad pun. But we had fun, we had fun doing that. Well, I was working swing shifts, so I happened to get off at 11 o'clock and I was hungry. So and I still lived out here, Clear Lake, Kaiser. And so I zipped there to Shakey's to have a pizza and, got in there. And about 15, 20 minutes later, my best friend, comes walking in and he says, "Hey, Steve," he goes, "Sherry's out in my car and she wants to talk to you." And she goes, "She just broke up with Craig." And she goes, "She needs to talk to you." So I said, "Okay." Well, if anybody out there in the world remembers cannery work, those hats you wore, those plastic helmets, they didn't do much for your hair back at that point. So I kept it on. And so I went out there and talking. She was crying her eyes out, and so I kind of console her,
You sweet guy, you.
And it was very, very innocent because I was dating another girl from South Salem High School, and who, by the way, I still talk with today frequently. She's become a very close friend. And so I said, Sherry, I said, it'll be okay. It's all right. It's okay. It's okay. I'll tell you what, sometime this week I'll give you a call and we'll go out for some ice cream. So I did. So 3, 4, 5 days later-ish, something like that, I called her and I said, "Hey, let's go out for some ice cream." She's okay. I said, "Well, I'll pick you up at whatever time it was. It was in the afternoon. It was still summer. And so I drove to her house in West Salem. And
so just to clarify, you got a car. That's good.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Just checking.
1967 Ford Galaxy 500 two-door coupe.
Come on.
And it was yellow.
Oh.
Little did I know that yellow would become one of my favorite colors. Anyway, so I went to the house, rang the doorbell. Nobody answered, so knocked on the door. Finally, Sherry comes to the door. And she was out in her backyard laying out in the sun. Well, she came to the door in this pink and yellow bikini. And
this is where you like yellow now. Maybe pink too.
Well, pink for the girl part, yellow for later on color. And so I had my car keys in my hand, and I dropped them. I was smitten.
Yeah.
I was totally, unequivocally smitten.
Yeah.
And so I said, ready for have ice cream? Yeah. And so she said, "Yeah, let me go change clothes." I said, "Okay, I'll wait out here." And so that was the first time we went out on a date. Then we started to date more. And then the girl that I was dating, I wrote her a Dear Johnette letter. And which was always a joke between her and I afterward, because that was really a dumb thing to do, but the only thing I could do because I was a coward to face her.
I get it.
It was the best way that I could think of. And then we started a date, and lo and behold, here we are. That many years later, and we were in school. So we were 20 when we got married.
Yeah, you got married at 20.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And with that comes our middle granddaughter, who was 20. She's a sophomore at Western. Now she's there on a softball scholarship. She is dating a young man from Corbin, who is in track.
Yeah.
And our son, much to his chagrin, I remind him periodically, because, son, Scott, buddy, pal, Mom and I got married when we were 20. He goes, "Dad, I don't want to hear it." "I don't want to hear it." Okay. But I think one of those, come back to your original question, is that yeah, I was the aggressor, at that point. Yeah, I took the lead in making sure that I wanted to pursue that relationship, and I just even to this day, and I tell young couples whenever the occasion may arise, guys, the grass ain't greener. It's not greener. There is nothing better, and you may think so. You may feel like you've got, you were infatuated with this, and this, and I got news for you. It doesn't work that way. And it's not easy. Marriage is not easy. And I think anybody that's married as long as we have, yeah, and we could have thrown the towel in once or twice, I think, but, only by the grace of God.
I like the verse here. I'm just going to read it real quick. To your point, and I think guys, me too. I met my college sweetheart in college, my very first year. We dated for 4.5 years and then finally got married. And I think guys are afraid to commit. I mean, I was one of those guys, so I get it. But I think once you find the girl, why delay getting married? So here's the verse I would say that goes with this. He who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord.
Amen to that one.
Marriage isn't easy.
No.
It's a refining process. It's sanctifying. But it's the greatest joy at the same time. Why delay what it is you want to do? I was talking to a young man last weekend at church. I happened to see him at Athey Creek. We go to Athey Creek up in West Lynn. We used to go same church here in Salem Heights. Anyway, I see this young man. He's from Salem. He's the brother of a guy that works here. I won't mention his name, but he's like, I go, hey, how you doing? I go, hey, so tell me about you. He goes, well, I'm engaged. Oh, cool. Where's your fiance? Well, she lives in a different state. She's going to college, and they're thinking about maybe getting married in a year. I'm like, doesn't that hurt you? Isn't that painful? They are engaged. And so anyway, again, God does have his own timing, and I get that people make decisions. I would just challenge it. Are you afraid to? Are you delaying? What is the story behind that? And so, but I think once you get married, once you finally do commit, I know for me, once I finally just go, you know what? Grass isn't greener. She's the one. I'm all in. And so, anyway.
Yep. It's, there's with our granddaughter, and she's the only one that really has a serious relationship. Our grandson, he goes, Grandpa, I'm not interested right now. I'm working on my career, and I'm working on my project car, So he's focused elsewhere. And then the interesting part, though, is that this is going to be a challenge for both my granddaughter and her boyfriend. Love the kid. He's from Hawaii.
Yeah.
He's a great kid, Christian kid. Great influence on my granddaughter, although she is a believer as well. But they are looking. When he finishes school this year, he's going to head back to Hawaii for 3 to 4 months to work. She, on the other hand, may be taking an intern a job of some kind at Disney World in Florida. So there's that. Again, there's that mile apart gap that is going to, and will it stand the test of distance and time? We'll find out. And we'll also find out if in fact they actually do that. And maybe they're enough committed, in that respect that maybe they won't. It's going to be interesting to see how that develops. Yeah.
Well, it is, because we don't know. I mean, God has a plan.
Yep.
And it may work out great.
Yep.
And it may not work out at all. So
absolutely.
Hey, go back to real quick. So let's talk about sports for a moment. What'd you play in high school? What sports?
Primarily baseball.
Baseball was your sport.
Yeah. Vic Backlund was the head baseball coach at McNair.
And you were a pitcher.
I was a pitcher. Yeah.
How fast could you throw?
I probably couldn't throw any harder. Faster than about 85.
That's pretty good, man. Are you kidding?
Had good control. But the biggest problem that I had was I couldn't stay healthy. Didn't play anything my senior year because my junior year, I kind of partially ruptured my Achilles tendon off my left ankle.
Hurts.
Yeah, and back in the dark ages, they used leeches to fix things. And so
just attach leeches on. It's all good.
And of course, and then playing football, you wore leather helmets back then. There was no protection whatsoever. And so but I couldn't stay healthy. And then when I got into college, I was, trying to go back and play baseball again. And then dadgummit, 2 weeks before this particular year, 2 weeks before season starts, I was playing a pickup basketball game, sprained my left ankle, and it swollen up about the size of a softball.
Wow.
So it's kind of like I could never stay healthy. So at some point, the Lord was saying, Stephen, stop.
Okay.
I didn't want to, but at some point it was kind of like, I'm going to find something else for you to do, but, and that leads me up to like now, working. What am I going to do? I know I'm going to do something. I just don't know what yet.
Yeah.
And I'm sure someone's going to tell me.
You've been working for 60 years. You've probably, since 10 years old, you're just a little over 70. And so
I was driving tractor when I was 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
And that's really, that is where we want to go is like, you've worked your entire life. You've got, you were married, had kids, grandkids. What does this phase of life look like for you? Are you scared just entering into retirement? Or are you excited? What's that look like?
I'm anxious for
what kind of verse for you?
Yeah.
We'll come back to that later.
Yeah. My wife is scared spitless.
Really?
Yeah. She does not want me underfoot. She is she's one of those where she goes, what am I going to do with you? What am I going to do with you? And she's been retired for almost 7 years.
Yeah.
But at that point, I thought I was going to retire as well.
Yeah.
And she said, no, I'll let you know when you can retire. Yes, dear.
Yes, honey.
Yeah. And she finally gave me her blessing,
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm going to do something. I just don't know what.
Well, you guys are kicking this off, the retirement, with a trip.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah, we just booked a cruise to Alaska. That'll be in September.
Okay. In September.
But this last year, we love to cruise. We're avid RVers.
Okay.
I got a 39 foot and some change motorhome sitting next to the house. And, but yeah, so we just came off of a 30-day cruise to the Mediterranean about 6, 7, 8 months ago.
Wow.
That was a lot of fun. We just missed the warships coming into the Med by a week.
You said you were on the ship for 30 days?
Yeah, we were, yeah.
Wow.
So it was, we went into, Spain, France, Italy,
Had you ever done anything like that? Was that the first time?
Not that duration, and not into Europe. I had not. My wife and her sister, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law went along too. They'd been to Europe, Western Europe before, and so, but this was my first time. And then about 2-3 weeks later, we got back. We went on a 2.5, 3 week-ish cruise to the Western Caribbean. We went out of New Orleans and went to Aruba, Belize, Colombia, Mexico, and I'm missing one or two other. Costa Rica. I went to Limon, Costa Rica. Went to the rainforest.
Yeah. And
now you know why they call it a rainforest, because it rained on us badly.
Wow.
And so but in fact, after we finish this podcast, I'll show you a picture of my brother, who was turning a corner in the rainforest and looked up, and there was a little monkey sitting in a tree, and all he did was stare at me.
No kidding.
Yeah, and as I was walking away, his head just turned. He just followed me the whole way. And it's either I looked like a long-lost relative of his, because I will tell you, buddy, honest and truly, this face is suited for radio. So
me too, but we're on camera today, so.
Oh, that's why mine's not running, because I broke it.
No, it's running. It's definitely running.
But it was fun. It was fun.
Wow.
We were in New Orleans for 3 days.
Do you like New Orleans?
It was different.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely different.
Never been before?
Never had been. But my sister-in-law and wife had been. They were avid jazzercisers. They were my sister-in-law was an instructor. My wife was her assistant for years and years. They had been to New Orleans several times. So they wanted to take me around, show me the sights. It was enjoyable. I mean, there was stuff that I'd never seen before, but it was a lot of fun.
You didn't go down, what, is it Bourbon Street?
Yeah.
You didn't go down there, did you?
We were down there. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, isn't it?
You know, we had just missed, trying to think when Mardi Gras is down there, but we didn't go during that time.
Yeah.
Because then it would have really been a zoo.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was enjoyable.
Good
Got to see a
food,
lot of
for
good
sure.
stuff. But when we were in the part that I was really it was unfortunate in my opinion when we were in the Mediterranean is that when we were in Turkey, well now it's called Turkiya.
Yeah.
We went to we were in the ruins of Pompeii and went to the ruins of Ephesus. What I was really disappointed at though when we went to Ephesus, there was our tour guide who I found out later was Muslim and didn't really speak too much about Christianity. But what I was really disappointed at was that we didn't see a lot of stuff, I'll just use that term as really technical, about Paul, the Apostle Paul and his visits and journeys into Ephesus.
Yeah.
But the city of Ephesus, I was shocked how big it was. And only I think they said only about 24% of the city has been excavated yet. But just being there, knowing that Paul had traveled there.
Yeah.
But it was enjoyable. We had some really, we were in Greece. Yeah. I forgot about Greece. And you can't appreciate the Colosseum and the Parthenon until you actually get there and touch it and see it for yourself physically.
So you guys went to Rome and hung out?
Yeah. And they say when in Rome, do the Romans do? I didn't.
What do the Romans do?
Weird stuff. So I was just trying to act normal, which sometimes my wife is appreciative of.
Yeah.
Because I can be a screwball.
Hey, it sounds like an amazing trip. One of my favorite questions I love to ask guys in general is, because I'm always trying to figure out who they are. Like, who are you? Why I do this for a living? No. Who are you? Not what do you do? But did that help you, that 30 days being on the Mediterranean, did that help you kind of unwind your career to kind of like acclimate to maybe what retirement would look like? Did that help at all?
I think there was a little bit of that, buddy. There was some. Probably one of the biggest things that I came away with was, Steve, when you retire, you're not going to nearly have as much money in the coffers as you did when you were working. So that basis of reality comes back and hits you pretty hard. And I think that's one of the areas that my wife kind of struggles with. Yeah. She goes, what are we going to do? And it's kind of like, so I penciled out for her what the gross is going to be and so forth. And it's kind of like, man, it's not bad, Cher. Don't worry about it. I mean, have faith.
There you go.
And I'm not worried about it, but I will tell you that I think what I came away with on that trip again was the fact that we were in places where so much history was made. And as you and I both know, you cannot duplicate, you cannot replicate history. It is what it is, how it happened, can never be erased.
Yeah.
And when I think about, again, I come back to Ephesus, when I think about the journeys that Paul made as an example, it's just unimaginable. It's hard to even put it into context in that respect. But I think it gave me a basis of, hey, let's do all this stuff now, because as we get a little older, we're not going to be able to do all that stuff.
And you're not guaranteed tomorrow anyway.
Nope. Yeah, it wasn't guaranteed even to get off the ship, or get back on.
Yeah.
And so you never know what's going to happen. Case in point, we were going to, now I forgot what island it was and it was just off in Italy, and we were on this passenger ship, and we were poor old guy was walking in. He stumbled, hit his head on the back of my wife's or my sister-in-law's chair, and broke his neck. And he's from the United States, and he was laying there. And it took an hour before any EMTs showed up. And of course, they did everything wrong. And my sister-in-law is a retired nurse from Salem Health. And so she tried to instruct, people, hey, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. And of course, they were doing everything wrong because there was a language barrier. But you sit back and you're going, man. And we found out later, we got back on board ship 1 or 2 days later, that they got him to a local hospital there in I'm trying to think, we were in Rome.
Okay.
And found out that fortunately for him, he had one of the finest neurosurgeons on call and staff that day at that hospital. And we found out later that he regained full movement of his arms and legs. So whatever happened, but he was there, he was completely paralyzed. He could not,
Wow.
It was sad. But that drove home just that point specifically is you never know. You never know.
Wow. We were in Italy in 2017, and part of our journey was Rome. It was our last destination. We were there for, I think, 3 nights. Great time, by the way. You're right. The Colosseum was amazing. My wife and my daughters decided they're going to do a different excursion. They're just going to go off on their own. So me and my wife would do ours. And there's a lot of cobblestone and the roads are really rough. Long story short, we were not paying attention. My wife steps in a pothole. She falls, and all I can do is I'm watching this in slow motion. And her head hits. We're in Rome, and her head hits. I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, long story short, we get back to the room, and she's okay, but man, it was scary to be in a foreign country and something like that happens.
Because you don't know. The language barrier in this particular case, as that example, I mean, it was, you don't know. And you don't know what's going to happen. You just flat don't. And, and we're all on borrowed time anyway.
Right now, man, borrowed time.
We don't know. We just don't know. So make hay while the sun shines. Be that person. Be that person who'll be there for someone if they have a question about Christ.
Yeah. Amen to that.
I get pretty emotional with that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do a really poor job of that, and it sometimes really tough pill to swallow. But, and I've said, hey, if I can just be that person, if somebody can see Jesus in me, great, fantastic. Case in point here, when this was during the time that Don and Ann Steele had the bowling alley, one of their employees, an older gentleman named Tom Carroll, never forget Tom. His nickname was Popeye Tom. And I would come down here from time to time, and we'd play pool on the big snooker table they have, because I enjoyed doing that, and or come here, have breakfast or lunch or something, back at that point, just because the family owned it. And so I would come in just because. Yeah. And Tom joined our men's group, and a month or so into it, one day we're sitting in the restaurant, and he says, Steve, he goes, I watched you for years. And I kind of sat back in my chair, and I said, what do you mean, Tom? He goes, I watched you for years. I was watching you to see if you were, you walk the walk and talk the talk. And it actually scared the bejeebers out of me at that point. And I'm sitting there going, gosh. And Tom eventually came to the Lord. And Tom passed a few years back. Crusty old guy. And I say this with a great deal of sincerity, is that you do not know, you never know who's watching you outside of the Lord. You don't know. And in this case, he was watching me. And I sit back and I think, man, if I would have stumbled, what effect would have had on him? And it's an eerie, uneasy feeling to have someone come to you and say, I watched you, to see if you were actually doing and saying the things you say you do and believe. It's scary.
Yeah, it's scary. People are watching. Yeah, I'm always amazed. I mean, just the story you told about that guy that fell down and broke his neck. Well, that was an impact. It impacted you in realizing life is short.
Yep.
I think we actually impact everybody or people every day, and we don't even realize it can be positive or negative.
I agree.
And people are watching. But hey, as we wrap up the podcast, I'm praying for you, number one. I mean, you're going into a season you've never been.
Yeah.
Hey, you're no longer going to work. What's a favorite Bible verse? I know you have a FCA Bible.
Right.
That's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite verse or passage that you want to share?
This is, in fact, the funny thing about this is we have on Wednesdays now for the last month or two, we every Wednesday we'll share with, hey, guys, anybody want to share a verse that really impacted you this week? And we'll do that. And I have several, but I think a short one. In this particular case, I've got Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, and it says, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." And I think that fits perfectly, I think, to the trip that we made to the Med, the issues, this what we experienced. And but we as Christians could hold on to that no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing. He's there. He's sitting right next to me. He's sitting right next to you.
Amen.
And he's on the other end of this podcast. He's in the airwaves. We got a chance when our trip to the Western Caribbean. I was sitting down, and it was kind of the foyer on deck 3. And there's a little bandstand there, and there's a dance floor, and there's the big bar at the other side of us, and all the chairs out there, and there's guest services and excursions, and Sherry and I are sitting there in front, and one of the crew members coming up, and they're playing trivia, and I can't remember the subject matter of it, but he was from a Western European nation. I can't remember which one now. And he was citing this particular sentence, for a response for everybody, and he couldn't pronounce a word. Now I can't remember what the heck the word was. Senior moment, and I have a lot of those. And so, and I said whatever it was, and he looked over at me and he smiled and he goes, "Thank you." So then, shortly thereafter, he repeated it, and he stopped. He came over and put the mic in front of me. He goes, and I repeated the word again. I got in about maybe half hour after that session was over. He came over. Sherry and her sister went to do something, probably shop. And he came over and sat down, and we talked. And I'll never forget his name. It was Amber, Amber. I've always thought that was a girl's name. Mm-hmm. No, because he ain't. And he 6'3", 6'4", good-looking stud, muscular, and he'd been working for the cruise line. This was Carnival. And this podcast is brought to you by Carnival Cruise Line. And so we start to talk, and his aspirations are to become a cruise director. So he's pretty heavily involved in some of this stuff and some of these little functions. And so we got to talk, chat, got to know each other a little bit. And he's single, but he has a girlfriend, and she's on board another ship for Carnival and working with that. And so, I after about 15, 20, 30 minutes we're talking, and I stopped and I put my hand on him and I said, my son? And he stopped me right there and he goes, my son? And I said, yeah. So first of all, you're old enough or young enough to be my son, but at the same time, I see something in you. I see something in you. And I said, Lord Jesus Christ has something for you somewhere. And he just stopped and he just looked at me and he just said, thank you. And then so we exchanged some niceties. He said, I got to go. I've got these other functions I got to be at and so forth. And I saw him maybe 2-3 times throughout the rest of the cruise. And as we were disembarking, he was one of the people at just, 10, 15 feet away from the door. And I get up there, and of course, then we're taking our luggage off instead of having it taken for us. And he saw me, a big old grin on his face. And he comes over and he just said, maybe we'll meet again.
Wow.
And I look at it and I thought to myself, I didn't say it, but I should have. And I said, yeah, maybe in heaven.
It's great, man.
But,
those are great words.
Tough. It was an emotional. I still get emotional with it.
You're more of an emotional guy than I thought, Steve. This is good.
Everybody has that. Hey, look at this guy, the big guy. He's just tough, rugged beard. Got the beard, and he's can be a real. There was a time. Yeah. Instant jerk. Just add alcohol back. College years, and but that ain't the case anymore.
There.
Unless somebody really riles me.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up, but I'll be praying for you and Sherry as you guys enter into this new journey, and hopefully I'll just keep seeing you every Wednesday morning, still doing Bible studies, still showing up.
We shall.
Being the man that God's called us to be. Keep preaching the word. Thank you for listening this week. We appreciate you every week that you listen, hearing stories like Steve's got, and just hopefully that you are encouraged and inspired. And if you ever want to be on the podcast, or you know if somebody has a great story that they would love to share, reach out to me. I'd love to talk with them and see if it'd be a good fit. I'm going to leave you with this verse. In Proverbs chapter 3, 5 and 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll make your path straight. Amen. So go there and do that. It'll change your life. So thanks, Steve. Appreciate you being on here this week.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it, pal.
Yep.
Great brother.